Chapter 526, Threat. 2. You. The elderly man was stunned, looking at young Luo Feng with astonishment and an expression of disbelief. How did you get in front of me? He had slightly increased his distance between them just now, so how did she arrive in front of him with just a momentary loss of his attention? Staring at the old man's shocked gaze, young Luo Feng shrugged and said, I was only playing with you earlier. Giving him hope and then letting him fall into despair. This was her retribution for this old man. Boom. A spiritual attack slammed into the elderly man's mind again. However, he had already reached sky level, intermediate rank after all, so he recovered in the blink of an eye. But this blink of an eye was enough to allow young Luo Feng's leg to mercilessly hit the old man's face, making him stagger back a few steps. The friction of her leg moving through the air had created several sparks. Young Luo Feng, the elderly man's face was livid. You know how to spiritually attack. This time, he was truly too careless. He could never have imagined that not only did young Luo Feng possess quick speed, but she also knew how to attack spiritually. No wonder so many members of the Tian family were knocked down by her in an instant. Young Luo Feng did not respond to his words, and her body flashed again, reappearing behind him. The moment that he turned around, a spiritual attack was released again, and then her leg landed on his lower back, causing him to cry out in pain. What followed was a one-sided beating. Something like a spiritual attack was a god-level cheating tool to begin with. The elderly man could only resist her spiritual attacks if his strength had reached advanced rank sky level. It was a pity that because he was not strong enough, he took a hit every time she used spiritual attacks. It's almost time. Looking at the sky, young Luo Feng did not continue her beating and directly kicked the old man to the ground with a bang, his geriatric body creating a large crater in the ground. After this fight was over, an innumerable amount of craters covered the mountain path, and a ceaselessly wailing person lay in every crater. Why? The elderly man's fingers deeply dug into the earth, and his furious eyes intently glared at the girl gradually descending from the sky. He asked between gritted teeth, why did you knock them down with only one blow but tormented me like this? At a time like this, the old man finally understood that young Luo Feng could have defeated him in an instant with one spiritual attack alone, but she did not do that. Instead, she played with him like a cat teasing a mouse. Young Luo Feng stood in front of him and looked down at him while towering over him, to vent some anger for someone. Before coming to Tian family, she already investigated all the members of the Tian family. This old man was the head of Tian family and also Tianya's full-blooded younger brother, but he did things that hurt Tianya back then. That was why she tormented him like this. Her point was to vent some anger for Tianya. Long Fei watched young Luo Feng with admiration. He knew that he did not follow the wrong person this time. Even if Master knew, she would also encourage him to continue following her. I have finished the bet in time. Young Luo Feng lightly raised her chin. So shouldn't you adhere to the agreement now and have all the members of the Tian family kneel and descend down the mountain? Suddenly, the old man started laughing, and his smile revealed a killing intent as he said, stressing each syllable, you're dreaming. Even if I die, I still won't endure that type of humiliation. Moreover, you can't kill me. Chapter 527, Threat. 3. Looking at the old man's confident face, young Luo Feng slightly narrowed her eyes and smiled. Are you sure? Her three words were powerful and resonated, reverberating throughout this crater-filled mountain path. The elderly man's eyes darkened a few degrees. He propped himself up and climbed out of the crater before coldly stating, young Luo Feng, if you still want Zhang Linger's life, then kneel down and beg me. Perhaps I will let her go then. His geriatric face was adorned with a smile of self-satisfaction as he haughtily glanced at her. As expected, after hearing the old man's words, young Luo Feng, who was originally pressing closer to him, halted her steps and intently stared at him. The old man guffawed. So what if you won? Don't you still have to listen to my order in the end? I will give you one chance. Kneel down in front of me, and I will immediately return Zhang Linger to you. To him, he did not need face anymore, he only wanted to humiliate the young girl in front of him to calm the fury in his heart. Young Luo Feng did not say anything and silently looked at him. Her dark eyes were placid without a single ripple, causing other people to be unable to detect her thoughts. How is it? Isn't this trade really worthwhile? You only need to kowtow a few times, and you get a life in exchange. It's your profit no matter how you think about it. After hearing this, the girl's features finally stirred. She slowly lifted her arm, and a long sword appeared out of thin air with a swish. Then, she instantly charged towards the old man. The man's reaction was quite quick, and he hurriedly leaned to the side, narrowly dodging it. However, even then, his shoulder was still slashed by the long sword, and blood spurted out. Young Luo Feng, it looks like you really don't care about whether Zhang Linger lives or not. Since it's like this, wait to collect her corpse then, said the old man maliciously. However, when he spoke the last word, young Luo Feng flicked a black pill from her fingers, shooting it into his mouth just as he closed his mouth. Taken by surprise, the old man swallowed his saliva as well as the black pill. You used an underhanded method against me, shouted the old man in fury with a shift in his expression. Young Luo Feng lightly raised her brows and looked at his furious face with a faint smile. The expression in her eyes completely infuriated him, and he snorted, "All right, since you insist on acting rashly, I will send a signal right now. After seeing my signal, the members of the Tian family will immediately kill Zhang Linger." After saying this, the old man's eyes shifted. However, this master has always been magnanimous, so if you give me the antidote and kowtow, I will still spare her. Spare Zhang Linger? If it wasn't for that bitch, we would not have attracted Yun Luo Feng. So after humiliating Yun Luo Feng, I will instantly have Zhang Linger killed. Yun Luo Feng glanced at the old man and aloofly said, "What I had you consume just now is the bone-shattering pill. After ingesting this medicinal pill, I can let you taste the feeling of having your bones shatter with a mere thought. It doesn't matter even if you can tolerate this type of pain since I can make your spirit disperse." The girl paused briefly before continuing, "Using your spirit as a trade for Zhang Linger's life, she won't lose anything. What is called a threat? The one that Yun Luofeng employed was the pinnacle of perfection. You want to kill Zhang Linger? Sure, she would lose her life, but she would still have a chance to reincarnate, but I won't give even this chance to you." Like this, Zhang Linger would not take a loss. Chapter 528. Yun Luofeng's Anger 1. Fear finally appeared in the eyes of the elderly man. He could not help but take a few steps back as he watched Yun Luofeng with an unsightly expression. "Are you bluffing to scare me?" Yun Luofeng smiled. "You will know in a moment whether I'm bluffing or not." After she spoke her words, an intense pain abruptly shot from the old man's body. The pain was inescapable, as though a slab of stone was continuously grinding on his body. At the same time, a burst of green flame appeared in his surroundings. The flame incinerated his body, causing his spirit to also burn in pain as though it was being ripped apart. Soul flame. It was actually soul flame. Just how strong did the spirit of this young girl have to be in order for her to even maneuver soul flame? He believed that if this continued, his spirit would definitely disperse, and he could never reincarnate. "Stop. Stop already," the elderly man wailed in anguish. "I promise you, I will return Zhang Linger to you. Stop this quickly." "Why should I believe you?" Yun Luofeng's brows slightly raised. "Have your people retrieve Zhang Linger. I will decide on your fate after I see her. If she's injured in any manner, I will let you taste the feeling of your spirit dispersing." The elderly man suddenly became anxious, and he secretly prayed that Zhang Linger's father did not torture her. Otherwise, he was afraid that his spirit would really disperse. "Tianzan," the old man gritted his teeth. "Bring him to Tianju's residence." "Yes, father." Tianzan's eyes were dark, but after seeing that even his own father was completely defeated by Yun Luofeng, he did not have any intention to resist, so he could only lead Long Fei toward the entrance. Under Tianzan's guidance, the traps were of no trouble, and Long Fei easily entered the Tian residence. At this time, in a small, remote courtyard, Tianzu held a rod in his hand and was using it to ruthlessly hit a young girl's snow-white skin. The girl's clothes were already shredded into pieces, and her once beautiful hair lay behind her in disarray. Her body was covered with ghastly horizontal marks, and her small, pale face was drenched in drops of sweat as big as beans. She tightly bit on her colorless lips and silently accepted Tianju's flogging. "You rebellious daughter, I regret allowing your mother to give birth to a rebellious daughter like you back then. You will anger me to death." Tianzu mercilessly lectured Zhang Linger, as though he wanted to vent all the humiliation that he suffered on her. If you had obediently listened to family head's words, perhaps I would also rise in standing as well and wouldn't be frequently bullied by those from the direct lineage. Let me tell you, as my daughter, you wouldn't exist without me. So you must do whatever I have you do without any disobedience. Zhang Linger snorted and closed her eyes, her pale face revealing her decision to accept death. She definitely would not obey the orders of the Tian family. Young Luo Feng was the only one who could make her submit in her entire life. Seeing Zhang Linger's stubborn appearance, Tianzu became more furious. He scooped up some salt water from the side and ferociously splashed it on her body. Hiss. The salt water soaked into the broken skin, creating an intense pain and making her inhale sharply and her body to ceaselessly shudder. Zhang Linger, if you want to enter the genealogical record of Tian family, go seduce young master Tian Yu. Tian Yu was the most prominent member of the younger generation of Tian family and was also the direct grandson of the head of the household. This was why Tianzu wanted Zhang Linger to go seduce Tian Yu. Chapter 529, Young Luo Feng's Anger 2. I already told you that I'm not interested in the Tian family at all, nor do I want to change my family name to Tian. Zhang Linger suddenly opened her eyes and angrily turned around, coldly glaring at Tianzu. You're seeking death. Hearing this, Tianzu grew angrier and slammed the stick down with a bang, leaving a red imprint on her back. Zhang Linger spat out a mouthful of blood, and her inner organs were all embroiled in pain. With a frosty smile, she said, "No matter how you hit me, I still won't obey you." What insolence! Zhang Linger, if it weren't for the fact that you are somewhat pretty, I wouldn't have you go seduce young master Tian Yu. With your status, it would be a miracle if you could be his concubine. Zhang Linger's inward sneer intensified as she argued, by following my master, I can be the proper wife of someone, but by entering Tian family, I can only be a concubine. The superiority and inferiority between wife and concubine are apparent. I really don't know whether to say you are stupid or foolish. Don't you understand the logic behind how being the concubine of a son of nobility is better than being the wife of a servant? I, Zhang Linger, would rather be the wife of someone poor than the concubine of someone rich. I don't seek to live a life of luxury, living without worrying about food is already enough. Zhang Linger supported her body to stand up. Her body was slightly trembling as she heavily leaned against the ancient tree behind her with resolution in her bright eyes. In her life, if she could find someone to live together until death did they part and have mutual respect in their marriage, it would be superior to living a life of luxury. Long Fei arrived just as Zhang Linger spoke these words. Although her voice was very weak, it was as melodious as a black-naped oriole and extremely sweet to Long Fei's ears. She would rather be the wife of someone poor than the concubine of someone rich. In a world where the weak were prey to the strong, just how many people could possess such a virtuous and noble character? Hence, Long Fei could not help but feel admiration for this stubborn girl due to her words. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly saw the girl's body fall towards the ground. He was stunned for a moment before rushing forward without thinking and catching her delicate body that was about to land on the ground. Zhang Linger's eyelashes imperceptibly trembled. Her complexion was pale, and her body was covered in crisscrossing scars, making her appear extremely weak. A fury faintly bloomed in his heart, and his grave eyes turned to Tianzu. Who are you? Upon seeing Long Fei's appearance, Tianzu's brows furrowed. Don't you know this is the Tian residence? How dare you actually trespass? Long Fei snorted and picked Zhang Linger in his arms before coldly saying, no matter what, she's your daughter. Not only did you not take care of her for a single day, but you also tormented her like this. What is the difference between someone like you and a beast? On the way to the Tian residence, Qingyan and the others had already informed Long Fei about the objective of this journey, so he thoroughly understood the relationship between Zhang Linger and the Tian family. Even if Tianzu did not like Zhang Linger, his blood still flowed through her veins, so how could he bear to treat her like this? She's my daughter, I'll hit her if I want and kill her if I want. Who are you to butt into my business? Since I'm the one who gave her life, she's not permitted to resist regardless of how I treat her. Long Fei tightly held onto Zhang Linger's body while glaring at Tianzu. I'm afraid you have no control over the life of this woman. Moreover, don't count on the people from the Tian family to rescue you. They can't even save themselves right now. What? Tianzu was taken aback for a moment, not comprehending the meaning of his words. The other party's punch landed on him squarely and threw him back. Chapter 530, Young Luo Feng's Anger 3. Plop. Tianzu spat out a mouthful of blood and fell over with a pale complexion. Shortly after, Long Fei walked up with big strides and picked him up by his lapel, quickly heading out of the courtyard. Outside the entrance of the mountain, it was completely silent, so silent that even the sound of the wind brushing over them could be heard clearly. Young Luo Feng had her arms across her chest as she half leaned against the trunk of a tree, silently listening to the anguished wails of the elderly man. The elders from the Tian family did not dare to utter a single word, afraid that they would attract young Luo Feng's gaze onto themselves and suffer the same punishment as the head of the household. Just then, the door at the entrance was opened again, and Long Fei, who was carrying Zhang Linger with one arm and holding Tianzu with the other, suddenly appeared in everyone's line of sight. Young Luo Feng's expression turned frostier after Long Fei's appearance, her body emitting a chilling icy air and her dark eyes revealing a menacing killing intent. It was over. After seeing the injuries covering Zhang Linger's body, the elderly man's heart suddenly sunk, and fear leaked into his expression as he inwardly reproached Tianzu. That bastard, actually beating Zhang Linger up to this extent. Normally, it would have been fine, but that girl was related to his life right now. According to young Luo Feng, if Zhang Linger was the slightest bit harmed, she would make his spirit disperse. Tianzu immediately caught sight of the elderly man caged inside the flame. Since he was unaware of what had happened yet, he hurriedly cried out, "Family head, elder, save me." However, before he finished speaking, a snow-white figure swiftly crossed the air and appeared in front of him. The young girl did not look at him at all and quickly pulled out a spiritual herb from her sleeve, handing it to Long Fei. "Feed this to her." Long Fei briefly paused. "How should I feed it to her?" "Chew it into pieces." Upon hearing the young girl's words, embarrassment overtook Long Fei's face, but he still accepted the herb from her and placed it in his mouth to slowly chew it into pieces. After handing the herb to Long Fei, young Luo Feng's gaze gradually turned to Tianzu, her brows faintly raised. "Did you cause her injuries?" From start to end, Tianzu did not think he did anything wrong. Zhang Linger life was given by him, so even if he took it back, so what? Why couldn't these people mind their own business? So what if I caused them? She's my daughter. Bang. Without waiting for Tianzu to finish speaking, young Luo Feng got a tight hold of his lapels and raised him up before viciously slamming him to the ground. Tianzu's butt felt like it was split in two, and even his organs started hurting. He wanted to shout in fury but was interrupted by the girl's haughty voice. "I said that I would kill a member of the Tian family for every injury that she sustained. Since she's so seriously injured, I can only bury the entire Tian family as well. First, I will start with you." As though he felt the intense killing intent from the girl, Tianzu finally felt fear. He tightly held his burning chest and said, "Family head, he won't let you get away with it." Young Luo Feng snorted. "He's merely a defeated opponent whose spirit will disperse very soon." It was only now that Tianzu caught sight of the old man's twisted expression under the shadows of the flame. His heart abruptly started to tremble. The head of the household, who was an intermediate rank sky-level spirit cultivator, was actually defeated by this girl. How was this possible? "Master," Long Fei glanced at young Luo Feng and said, "When I went to rescue her just now, I saw a tub of salt water in the courtyard, and Zhang Linger's body has the presence of salt. This subordinate boldly surmises that this monster must have hit Zhang Linger and then used salt water to torture her." Chapter 531, Young Luo Feng's Anger 4. When Long Fei finished speaking, a chilly feeling came up from the bottom of the feet of Tianzu, causing him to shiver from the cold and fearfully look up at the cold-eyed girl in front of him. "Qingyan, Yi Ling," young Luo Feng slightly raised her brows and icily ordered, "However he treated Zhang Linger, I want it returned to him doubled. I'll let you handle this matter." Die. That was too simple for a monster like him. She would never permit him to die that easily. "Yes, miss." "Yes, master." Understanding her meaning, Qingyan and Yi Ling cupped their fists in salute and walked toward Tianzu, who had fallen on the ground. Don't come here." Tianzu looked at the approaching duo, and the fear in his eyes intensified. He was about to cry out for help when Qingyan leapt up and landed a kick on his body. Tianzu, whose face had turned ghastly white, nearly spat out blood from her kick. But this wasn't enough. While Tianju's heart trembled even more, Qingyan pulled out a dagger from somewhere unknown and slashed it across his face while saying with a dark smile, "Master, where do you think I should start? Should I chop off his nose first or his ears? Right, the salt water too. Yi Ling, help me prepare the salt water." Since this guy tortured Zhang Linger like that, she would make him hang between life and death. Yi Ling affectionately glanced at Qingyan before turning to walk to stand in front of Tianzan with a cold expression on his stern features. "If you don't want to end up like him, prepare a tub of salt water for me within half an hour." Tianzan was stunned briefly and glanced at Tianzu, who was under Qingyan's foot, before decisively walking towards the entrance of the mountain. Tianju's heart was completely chilled. He did not know what had happened that would cause young master to obediently listen to these people's orders like this. Half an hour sounds about right. Qingyan slightly narrowed her eyes while happily looked at Tianzu. "I think that chopping off your arm first is better. Which hand did you use to hurt Zhang Linger?" Qingyan had followed young Luo Feng for the longest, so she had learned some of the young girl's ruthlessness. Her pretty face was full of smiles, and her curved eyes were akin to the crescent moon, brilliant and striking. However, it was the mouth of this innocent and harmless-looking girl that spoke such cruel words. Tianju's face turned deathly pale from his fear. He did not dare to speak, but his trembling body already exposed the fear in his heart. "Since you aren't telling me, I will chop off both of your arms." The dagger in her hand slowly moved to hover above Tianju's arm, and the smile on her face became crueler. "No." Tianzu widened his eyes in fright. He voiced a loud shout just as the dagger in Qingyan's hand landed. This dagger might look small, but it was very sharp and was able to chop off the arm of a man in a split second. Blood spurted out, painting Qingyan's lapel red. Tianzu immediately fainted from this intense pain. The elderly man, who was trapped within the soul flame, could not bear it anymore and bellowed, "Enough." His voice shakily continued, "Young Luo Feng, even if Tianzu was at fault, don't you think your maidservant is too cruel? He only used a stick to hit Zhang Linger, but your maidservant chopped off his entire arm. A vicious and merciless person like that isn't worthy to be called a woman." Young Luo Feng faintly smiled. "If I didn't come to find her, who knows how your Tian family would torture her? Hence, I won't have any pity for members of the Tian family. However you harmed her, I will make you pay it back 100-fold. Chapter 532, Tianya is here. 1. The elderly man immediately quieted down. He knew that young Luo Feng had spoken the truth. If she did not come here to rescue Zhang Linger, with Tianju's violent personality, Zhang Linger's fate would not be that bright. He could only helplessly sigh as despair slowly emerged in his eyes. At this time, Tianzan walked to Yi Ling while carrying a tub of salt water. He placed the tub down with a livid face and snorted before walking back to the ranks of the Tian family. Splash! Qingyan ladled some salt water and watered it onto Tianju's dismembered shoulder. The intense pain instantly woke Tianzu up. He looked at Qingyan, who was smiling like the devil, with a ghastly pale appearance. "I beg you, let me go." His voice was hoarse, and his eyes contained prayers. Only now did he experience what fear was. "Let you go?" Qingyan asked with a laugh. "Back then, did you think about letting Zhang Linger go?" Tianzu opened his mouth, his throat completely dry. He knew that he had made a mistake this time. "Since you didn't plan to let Zhang Linger go back then, why should I let you go now?" Qingyan asked with her chin raised as she looked down at him. Tianzu hopelessly closed his eyes. He wished he could faint again this instant. It would be better than facing these devils. "There's no need to keep the Tian family." Young Luo Feng's indifferent words determined the fate of the Tian family. "Young Luo Feng," Tianzan's expression abruptly transformed as he indignantly roared, "I admit that your talent is not bad, and you are also strong. But the person behind our Tian family is Tianya, who reached the realm beyond sky-level cultivator long ago. If you only wanted to slightly discipline our Tian family, fine. But you actually want to destroy our Tian family. Do you think Tianya will allow your actions?" "No matter what, Tian family was Tian Ya's clan, and his father was Tian Ya's brother. Regardless of Tian Ya's callous feelings for the Tian family, he would not stand aside and watch the Tian family be destroyed. This was the origin of Tian Zan's confidence. Young Luo Feng's wicked eyes slid toward Tian Zan. Several decades ago, Tian Ya became famous at a young age, and your Tian family bestowed an extremely large expectation upon him. However, Tian Ya fell in love with a woman that the Tian family did not approve of. Because of this, not only did you risk framing him to appear immoral, but you also caused two people who loved each other to be separated. I reckon that Tian Ya already hates the members of your Tian family to the bones, so why would he continue to help you? Tian Zan's expression abruptly changed as he tightly clenched his fists. A heaven-reaching fury enveloped his livid expression. Just who are you? The elderly man surrounded by fire looked up at young Luo Feng with a twisted expression on his geriatric face. He intently stared at her. There's no way that you could have known about this. Besides several high-level personnel in the Tian family, only the family head of a few formidable powers could find out the reason behind Tian Ya's departure from the Tian family all those years ago. Even the sons of the Tian family did not know about this. Hence, for all these years, the sons of the Tian family often used the famed reputation of Tian Ya to lord their power over everyone in the outside world. However, now, a mere granddaughter of a general from the Longyuan kingdom actually knew about these deep secrets of the Tian family. The elderly man could not help but suspect her identity. Ho ho, girl, you missed something. Suddenly, an aged voice appeared out nowhere. Closely following it, everyone watched as a white-clothed elderly man slowly approached them while stepping on thin air. Chapter 533, Tian Ya is here too. Everyone was taken aback as they watched a tiny old man appear out of thin air. They did not expect Tian Ya, who had not returned for a long time, to show up. Then, joy erupted from their hearts. Tian Ya is here, we will be saved. The old man's hand was towing a cute, little girl, but the girl had evidently fainted while in the air. She had foam frothing from her mouth and her eyes had rolled to the back of her head. Suddenly, as though sensing something, she slowly opened her eyes, and she rapidly charged toward young Luo Feng. Master, Tian Ya is awful. He flew so fast. I still feel dizzy, and my limbs are like water even now. Said Lin Ruobai in an aggrieved manner with a pout. However, her words stunned everyone present. The little girl that Tian Ya brought here is actually young Luo Feng's disciple. Then what is the relationship between young Luo Feng and Tian Ya? Unease immediately rushed into their heart, making their hearts tighten. You came. Young Luo Feng faintly smiled and turned to Tian Ya. You just said that I missed a part. What were you talking about? The old man's eyes darkly looked at the master of the Tian family and sneered, this was all done by that great brother of mine. Back then, I left the Tian family in anger. They were afraid that my talent would be utilized by other people, so they had no scruples about sending experts from the Tian family to assassinate me. It's fortunate that I'm hard to kill, so I didn't die at the hands of those people and also attained today's accomplishments. After hearing Tian Ya's words, the expression of the elderly man encircled by the soul flame instantly transformed. Tian Ya, what nonsense are you speaking? We are blood family, and the Tian family is also your clan, so why would we assassinate you? The person who wanted to kill you is that woman Fu Sheng. As soon as Long Fei heard the old man's words, he burst into anger, bullshit. It was only after saying this that he regained his wits and realized his reaction was a bit drastic. He quickly calmed down and coldly stated, everyone has known about your Tian family's conduct since long ago. But you still dare to shift the blame and wrongly accuse an innocent woman. However, no one will believe your words. This bastard actually dared to say that his master tried to assassinate Tian Ya. How could this be possible? Ever since his master went to that particular place after leaving the Tian family all those years ago, she had never left it for the last several decades. As for him, he only learned about master's past because he luckily entered there while injured, was saved by master, and subsequently taken in by her as a disciple. Just because they saw how master was missing for so many years, they unabashedly framed her. These shameless people deserve to die. Tian Ya did not hear the oddness from Long Fei's words, so he did not take another look at him and coldly stared at the old man with contempt in his eyes. Do you think I'm so stupid that I don't even know who was trying to assassinate me? Tian Yi, is it that you think too highly of yourself or do you think I'm stupid? Tianyi was trembling from the pain of being burned inside the soul flame, and his trembling intensified after hearing Tianya's words. I remember that you also took part in the assassination attempts back then. Tianya turned to the elders of the Tian family. His killing intent flooded out as he coldly stated, "What is laughable is that you all thought I didn't know anything and even dared to rely on my reputation to run amok. If it weren't for the fact that I was devoting all of my time to look for Fu Sheng, the Tian family already wouldn't exist." Chapter 534. Tianya is here 3. Despair exuded from Tianyi's eyes. Since you are saying that you didn't take actions against our Tian family for all these years because you used all of your time to find Fu Sheng, why did you come to the Tian residence now? Because. The corner of Tianya's lips raised. I heard that members of your Tian family kidnapped the maidservant of young Luo Feng. I only came to help her get her back and to also settle the account with your Tian family. Tianyi looked up at Tianya, dumbfounded, the despair in his eyes turning to shock. Tianya's original meaning was that he was too busy, so he did not have time to settle the score with the Tian family. However, because of Yun Luo Feng, he had no scruples to drop everything and come here to stand up for her. Just how deep was their friendship that it would cause Tianya to make a choice like this? The other people all turned to Yun Luo Feng, their expression all but saying their desire to ask about her relationship with Tianya. Uncle Tianya, Tian Zan dazedly spoke, asking the question that everyone wanted to ask, who is this woman to you? Logically speaking, with Tianya's identity, he should not have any relations to someone with a background like Yun Luo Feng's. Then, while everyone was nervously waiting, Lin Ruobai injected from the side, "Junior Tianya, hurry and take care of these people. They're truly an irksome presence." Junior Tianya. Everyone immediately froze, especially Tian Zan, who had just ridiculed Yun Luo Feng. His face completely drained of color. He wished he could faint this very second. It would be better than facing this type of shocking news. Tianya. Surprisingly, Tianyi was not as stunned as everyone else. Instead, he flew into a rage and angrily said, "This woman might have decent talents, but she's only a sky-level cultivator. Your strength is way above hers, and there's also your excellent medical skills, so what right does she have to be your master?" After saying this, Tianyi inhaled a harsh breath, and his face became increasingly twisted. "I know you hate the Tian family. But there's no need for you to use your life to anger our Tian family. There's still time for you to regret it. As long as you return to the Tian family and we join forces, we can definitely make the Tian family regain its former grandeur." Tianyi's expression slowly softened as he patiently and well-meaningly persuaded. He wanted to use his words to pull Tianya back to the Tian family. Unfortunately, Tianya directly overlooked Tianyi's words and cheerfully turned to Lin Ruobai. "Miss Xiaobai, you calling me junior puts me at ease. Don't worry, this old man might not be good at other things, but my ability to be shameless is quite strong. If Miss Yun won't accept me as a disciple, then I will simply keep bothering her until she accepts." Long Fei's eyes widened in surprise, his face full of disbelief. "This is the man that my master likes. He is actually this, shameless." However, when other people heard these words, their feelings were completely different from Long Fei's. It was well known that the Tian family expended a great amount of effort to look for Tianya. However, Tianya was cold and indifferent to them. Who knew that someone as arrogant as Tianya would shamelessly want to formally become the disciple of a young girl? And that girl even rejected him. If this matter was spread, it would definitely shock the entire continent. "You aren't allowed to call me girl from now on," Lin Ruobai said with her hands on her hips and her bright eyes widened. "You need to respectfully address me as senior. Otherwise, I will speak badly of you in front of master and make her reject you as a disciple for her entire life." "Alright," the little old man fawningly smiled, "whatever you say." In order to become Yun Luo Feng's disciple, he evidently discarded his old shame. Chapter 535. Tianya is here 4. Everyone's expression turned more unsightly. Several decades ago, Tianya disobeyed the orders of the Tian family and insisted on marrying that woman of unknown origins. Several decades later, he similarly ignored the fate of the Tian family and acknowledged Yun Luo Feng as master. Don't you want to know why this old man would rather give up my face and want to formally become little Yun's disciple? Tianya finally felt the gaze of the members of the Tian family and coldly looked at them. It is because this girl saved a patient who even I couldn't help. Her medical skills are a lot more brilliant than mine. I have nothing to lose in acknowledging her as my master. Boom. Like thunder on a clear day, this news hit everyone and made them quiver, and their hearts all started trembling. Their deathly pale faces were full of astonishment. Young Luo Feng's medical skills were superior to Tianya's. My god, just what type of strong enemy did our Tian family offend this time? Tianzan's face filled with despair once more. He staggered back a few steps, his butt landing with a bang on some pointy rocks on the ground, but he did not feel any pain. His shuddering body revealed his shock. Tianya snorted and turned his gaze to the fallen Tianzu again, his eyes slightly looking up. On the way here, I already asked around. It was you who snatched the maidservant of my little master. And that maidservant is your daughter as well. You originally had a way to latch onto a great ride, something that many people could not attain even if they begged, but you actually gave it up. Tianju's eyes rolled to the back of his head, and he fainted once more. Why would Qingyan give him this chance though? She woke him up with a scoop of salt water. Just as he regained consciousness, he heard Qingyan's sneering voice. You can continue to faint, I don't mind waking you up again. However, my method of waking people up is fairly rough, so I hope you can tolerate it. With a threat like this, how could Tianzu dare to continue to faint? Remorse suffocated his heart. If he knew earlier that young Luo Feng had this type of strength, he would not have treated Zhonglinger like that. Otherwise, he perhaps could have used Zhonglinger to rise in status. The more that Tianzu thought about it, the more regret he felt, so much so that even his intestines turned green from regret. Unfortunately, no matter how much he regretted it, nothing could be done about it now. Ho ho, Tianyi coldly chuckled all of a sudden. His chuckles were low and hoarse, similar to sharp claws endlessly chaffing a wooden board. Tianya, do you think that there was truly no reason why our Tian family was able to remain standing for this many years? Tianyi's fear slowly disappeared from his aged face, and he stared at Tianya with ridicule. It's a pity that you weren't the head of the Tian family, so there are some things that you didn't have permission to know about. Tianya's eyes slightly narrowed, a cold glint flashing through the bottom of his eyes. What do you mean? What do I mean? Ha ha ha, Tianyi madly chuckled. His geriatric face was scarily twisted, his eyes covered in blood vessels. Tianya, young Luo Feng, if I die here today, you must all be buried along with me. Under the burning of this soul flame, Tianyi could feel his spirit weaken more and more, as though it could disappear at any moment. However, his appearance did not have its prior fear. As soon as he thought about how these people would be buried along with him, excitement filled his heart. Tianyi pulled a dagger out of somewhere unknown and slashed open his finger, allowing his blood to drip onto the ground. Then, his low voice slowly rang in the afternoon sky. Chapter 536, Tian Family's Trump Card 1. Head of the Tian family, Tianyi, earnestly requests for every ancestral elder to come and help me fight. Ancestral elder. Everyone from the Tian family was startled and looked at Tianyi in confusion, clearly not understanding what he was saying. After all, there were certain things that only the master of the household had the qualification to come into contact with, and even young Master Tianzan did not have that qualification. Some punk from who knows where actually dares to cause trouble at my Tian family. Boom. A loud shout suddenly came from the sky, directly entering the spirit of those who heard it. It was like a large hammer hitting the spirit, causing a wave of trembling. Those whose strength was on the weaker side spat out a mouthful of blood, their face deathly pale. Tianya's expression instantly became extremely serious, his severe eyes turning to the sky. At that moment, his chest was heaving, and even the aura around his body turned several degrees frostier. In the void, several elderly men stood with their arms behind their back, arrogantly looking down on the crowd below them. However, the bodies of these men were very transparent, shaking with the wind. It's you. Fury rushed forth from Tianya's body as he tightly clenched his fists. I didn't imagine that the Tian family would actually have secret techniques that could allow your spirit to be preserved and be able to fight as well. No. Tianya's words were just spoken when the originally silent young Luo Feng had already walked to beside him. At this moment, the young lady's features were grave. If I have guessed correctly, the Tian family did use some secret technique to preserve their spirit, but they can only come out once. That is to say, the Tian family can only borrow the power of these deceased people once. This is why they don't use the ancestral elders and instead try everything else possible to force you to return to the Tian family. Young Luo Feng continued with a smile, it's only when danger appears in the Tian family that the head of the Tian family will summon these people. Also, after they leave wherever their spirit is preserved, their spirit will immediately disperse after a certain period of time. In other words, these people forsook the chance to reincarnate and chose to remain in the Tian family just so they could appear and save the Tian family when the family was in danger of being destroyed. It had to be said that young Luo Feng greatly respected the sacrifice of these strong people from the Tian family. It is because there were a continuous number of strong people who used this method to stay after their death that the Tian family could remain standing and unshaken for this many years. Little master, how do you know this much? Asked Tianya as he glanced at young Luo Feng, flabbergasted. Hearing Tianya's appellation for her, young Luo Feng raised her brows. You should address me as before, I really am not worthy of the title, little master. This man was already old. Being called, little master, by an old man more than 60 years old, how wouldn't she be embarrassed? Tianya shamelessly said, all right, then I will keep calling you little Yun, but I will definitely bother you until you agree to teach me medicine. Tell me first though, how do you know so much? Young Luo Feng blinked and meaningfully smiled. I guessed. After all, she could not tell Tianya that she possessed a godly cheating tool like Xiaomo, so there were not many things in this world that she did not know. You guessed. The corner of Tianya's lips twitched. He glanced at Tianyi's livid face and knew that young Luo Feng had guessed right. These strong people from the Tian family really could only come out once. And their spirit would disperse after a certain period of time. Tianya. In the air, the cyan-robed elderly at the lead position coldly looked down on Tianya. You traitor of the Tian family, you actually have the face to come back. Chapter 537. Tian family's trump card 2. Why don't I have the face to come back? Tianya sneered. Don't forget, for all these years, it's always been your Tian family begging me to return. Now that I've returned, you are treating me with this type of attitude. Humph. The cyan-robed elderly man snorted and expressionlessly said, you were allowed to return to the Tian family because your younger brother, Tianyi, pitied your incredible loneliness and hardship. It wasn't our decision. Since you left that decisively back then, you shouldn't have stepped onto Tian Mountain again. Back then. Hearing these words mentioned, Tianya's eyes turned more severe. You still have the nerve to mention the events back then. If it weren't for you old things, why would Fu Sheng abandon me and leave? I was originally still worried about being unable to find you and take revenge, but I didn't imagine that you would still be here. The cyan-robed man arrogantly smiled. A bead of rice like you, how can your brightness compete with the sun and moon? Tianya, no matter how outstanding you are now, in our eyes, you are still the tiny weakling from several decades ago. Since this old man compared Tianya and his companions to beads of rice, then the Tian family would be that enormous sun and moon. As beads of rice, how could their brightness outshine that of the sun and moon? Tianya's heart grew angrier, and a cold light was exuded from his slightly narrowed eyes. However, he knew that these ancestral elders were different from other people of the Tian family, and he could not go against these many people with his strength alone. Several decades ago, the strength of these old men had already reached sky-level spirit cultivator. Now that these many years had passed, their strength was stronger. The fact that the Tian family previously declined was definitely connected with their death. However, he didn't expect that these people would use this type of method to protect the Tian family. Having their spirit disperse, was it really worth it? Miss Yun, leave first with your subordinates and Miss Xiao Bai. Tianya's eyes grew colder. Let me handle these guys. Young Luo Feng turned to look at Tianya. Can you handle these many people alone? I can't, but I can hold them off for a bit. I will chase them down after you leave Tian Mountain. Tianya took a deep breath, his face more solemn than ever before. If it was in the past, upon seeing these enemies, he definitely would charge up without regard for his life and fight them to the death. However, he now had people that he needed to keep in mind. He had to wait until young Luo Feng was safe before he put his all into the fight. Otherwise, if young Luo Feng was here, they would certainly accidentally injure her. Tianya, you should know about my origins. Young Luo Feng looked at Tianya with a smile on her lips. I was born in an aristocratic family of generals. And for generals, they definitely would not disregard and abandon their teammates on the battlefield. Tianya was taken aback briefly before releasing a helpless, wry chuckle. Girl, this isn't the battlefield. To me, anywhere that has fighting is the battlefield. If I abandon my teammates because of cowardice, then that grandfather of mine would definitely scold me. Young Lu Feng donned a smile. Her features carried her untamed nature, similar to a wild horse that was hard to tame and unwilling to obey anyone's orders. Just as Tianya was contemplating her words, young Luo Feng suddenly asked, Tianya, do you trust me? Immediately, Tianya's eyes landed on the girl. After seeing the confidence in her features, his heart gradually calmed down. Perhaps this young girl had a magic that made others involuntarily trust her. Girl, tell me, what do you want me to do? Asked Tianya as he helplessly shook his head. Chapter 538. A card up one's sleeve 1. Young Luo Feng faintly smiled. If they had never died, perhaps I wouldn't have any solution. However, they're currently appearing in the form of a spirit, and there are quite a lot of methods to deal with spirits. Moreover, spirits were very valuable, especially those of strong people. They could become milk tea's nourishment. Squeak, squeak. As though sensing young Luo Feng's thoughts, Milk Tea called twice. His eyes were unblinkingly staring at the spirits in the air, its drool nearly dripping down. As a gold-seeking hamster, besides consuming spiritual herbs, Milk Tea could also use the spirit of strong people to raise its strength. However, the spirits of strong people and spiritual herbs were both rare, so there were not many powerful gold-seeking hamsters in the world. Young Luo Feng soothed Milk Tea and said with a smile on her lips, no need to rush, those spirits will belong to you in a moment. Enough to satiate you for a while. In the air, after hearing young Luo Feng's words, the expressions of the elderly men darkened, and they coldly stated, little girl, don't be too presumptuous as a person. Otherwise, you won't have a good ending. As though not hearing their warning, her fingers gently petted Milk Tea's little head with a wicked air in her smile. When the time comes, are you planning to directly eat it raw, or should I help you barbecue it a bit? I wonder how a barbecued spirit would taste. You. The cyan-robed old man flew into a rage. Little girl, you are truly incorrigible and have the same conduct as this traitor of my Tian family. I will send you two to hell to accompany each other in a moment. A gray-robed elderly man glanced at young Luo Feng before turning his sight to Tian Fu, who was wearing a cyan long robe, and said with a frown, Tian Fu, this little girl is obviously stalling for time on purpose. She already guessed some time ago that we can only appear for a short amount of time, so we should stop talking rubbish with her. Just start fighting. Tian Fu harshly took a deep breath. You're right, these two are purposefully stalling for time. I fell into their crafty scheme because I was too furious. Since it's like that, we will attack and kill these people now and resolve this as fast as possible. Swish. After he spoke those words, Tian Fu plunged down from the air, his body rapidly heading for Tianya. His aura was severe as he wanted to kill this traitor of the Tian family in one hit. Boom. Tianya met him without any fear and blocked his attack. Suddenly, a powerful force surged up around the two of them, destroying all the surrounding trees. It also swept up the dust, causing it to fly everywhere. Under Tian Fu's fierce strength, Tianya was forced back a few steps but halted to a stop a meter away. He looked up at Tian Fu, his features darkening. Tianya, it's already been so many years. So I thought you would be more powerful than this, but you're only so, haha. Tian Fu madly chuckled. If you had obediently listened to the Tian family back then and married the woman that we prepared for you, then many things wouldn't have happened. You did all this to yourself. Who allowed you to disobey the orders of our Tian family? While saying this, Tian Fu did not stop attacking Tianya. In the beginning, Tianya had to escape in a disheveled state, but he quickly adjusted to his opponent's moves and gradually responded with ease. Seeing that Tian Fu could not control Tianya on his own, other people rushed up as well, planning to use the quickest speed to deal with this old man. Everyone's eyes were on the two fighting people, so no one realized that an adorable child had suddenly appeared beside young Luo Feng out of thin air. Chapter 539. A card up one's sleeve 2. Master, for all these years, I've only learned this one matrix. I didn't expect it would be of use here. Xiao Mo kneeled down and placed stones on the ground. He wiped the sweat from his forehead before standing up. However, this matrix of mine can only imprison the spirits and can't destroy them. When you inject your soul flame into the matrix, it can quickly make the spirit of these spirit forms disperse. Just now, young Luo Feng had said that if the strong people of the Tian family appeared in their physical body, she would not have any solutions. But they only had themselves to blame for being a group of spirit entities. To spirit entities, soul flame was their nemesis. Although these people were really strong, they already did not have the protection of a physical body, so they were vulnerable to soul flame. If their physical bodies still existed, with their strength, soul flame would not even have time to penetrate their body before being destroyed. Bang! Tian Fu's punch landed on Tianya, sending his body into the air, and Tianya coincidentally landed right inside the matrix. Although these ancestral elders of the Tian family saw Xiao Mo moving stones on the ground from the start, they disregarded it since Xiao Mo was only a kid. In their eyes, they possessed absolute strength, and young Luo Feng could not stir up much trouble. Unfortunately, Tian Fu and company did not pay too much attention to the people beside young Luo Feng, so they did not know that Xiao Mo appeared from thin air and thought he had been at Tian Mountain from the start. If he had noticed that Xiao Mo appeared from thin air, perhaps he would not be so overconfident. Tianya, with your strength alone, you can't handle this many people from our Tian family. Tian Fu guffawed as he stepped into the matrix. At the same time, the other ancestral elders entered as well and all looked at Tianya in ridicule. This is the price for disobeying the Tian family's order back then. At this moment, seeing the situation brightening, a dash of hope appeared in the eyes of everyone from the Tian family. Who cares how powerful Tianya was? There were so many ancestral elders of the Tian family here, so why would they fear one Tianya? Thinking of this, everyone could not resist saying, "Ancestral elder, kill the traitor Tianya." As a member of the Tian family, not only did he not help the Tian family, but he also wanted to destroy our family with outsiders. That's right, he once fell in love with a woman of unknown origins, and now he recognizes someone with a low status as master. He simply can't be forgiven. So what if Tianya acknowledged young Luo Feng's strength? To them, she was a mere eldest miss of the general's estate and had a low status, so how could she be compared with the Tian family? Tianya climbed up from the ground and clutched his injured chest while coldly stating, "The Tian family has nothing to do with who I want to marry, nor is it your business who I want to recognize as master. Since I could escape from the Tian family's assassination back then, I can do the same now." Hearing him, Tian Fu jeered, "Several decades ago, you left with only yourself, but you now carry this much baggage. I would like to see what strength you will use to leave." After saying this, killing intent burst forth from his body and covered Tianya's body. "Alright, it's about time. I don't plan to keep talking rubbish with you, so I will end your lives now." He haughtily tilted his head up and looked down at Tianya from high above. Then, he slightly raised his arm and a sharp long sword appeared in his hand. However, the moment that he grabbed the sword, a moss green flame erupted from the ground with a boom and enveloped their bodies in an instant. Chapter 540, Clan Annihilation 1. Hiss. The pain directly entered their spirit, making the ancestral elders howl in anguish. This howl was similar to that of a wild wolf, incomparably ferocious and bubbling with a heaven-bursting fury. "What have you done?" Tian Fu's whole body was trembling as he angrily looked at young Luo Feng. Amid this fire, he felt like his spirit was being ripped apart by a countless number of hands, and he could not even utilize his spiritual energy. The satisfied expressions of the people from the Tian family also froze because of this sudden, unforeseen event. Everyone did not understand what had occurred, and their eyes were brimming with astonishment. "Ancestral elder." Tian Yi's voice was very weak. He looked at Tian Fu and the others, who were also engulfed in flames, and said between gritted teeth, "Hurry and leave that place. Hurry. Leave." Right. This soul flame was different from the one that Tian Yi suffered from. The soul flame that Tian Yi suffered from only burned around him, but the flame here burned in a limited area. They only needed to leave this area to distance themselves from the soul flame. Tian Fu quickly turned around, wanting to dart out of this place. However, his head slammed into an invisible wall with a thud, and his body bounced off of it. "What is this?" The other ancestral elders turned pale with fright as they all lifted their hand to touch the air in front of them. There was clearly nothing there, but their hands came into contact with an invisible wall. No, Tian Fu lost his mind and wildly shouted as he slammed into it once more, "I want to leave. Let me leave." As expected, his body was shot back again, and he landed on the ground butt first. Despair was written all over Tian Fu's eyes as he felt the pain of his spirit being shredded into pieces. Even now, he still did not understand what had happened. Tian Ya, who was situated inside the matrix, was also just as shocked. He bewilderedly looked at the maniacal elders of the family and truly did not understand why these people suddenly went crazy. There was clearly only air in front of them, so why did these people circle this piece of air in a deranged manner and lose their mind over it? Also, the moss green flame that was twined around the ancestral elders appeared to have eyes of its own and did not injure him at all. Tian Ya, Tian Fu gnashed his teeth, "That woman can find us in here, but you also can't leave. Don't forget that we are stuck in the same place." Just as his last word was spoken, Tian Fu abruptly realized that Tian Ya had already reached the shapeless wall that blocked him just now. Then, he lifted his foot and carefully explored the space in front. A miracle occurred. Tian Ya's foot successfully penetrated that invisible wall, and then his entire body went through too. Tian Fu completely lost his mind and angrily roared, "That is impossible. Why can you leave? I won't believe it. I absolutely won't believe it." After saying that, he stood up again and collided with the wall. Just as before, that invisible wall appeared again, flicking him back. At a time like this, Tian Ya, that beast, actually stepped into the matrix from the outside again. Then, without waiting for a reaction from Tian Fu, he proceeded to step out of the matrix. As he continued to step in and out of the matrix, he taunted Tian Fu and the others, "I come in, then I leave again. I come in, then I leave again. Are you envious? Jealous, right? If you have the guts, come out to kill me. What talent is it to hide in there?" Chapter 541, Clan Annihilation 2. Upon seeing the old man's shamelessness, Tian Fu nearly spat blood out. He angrily pointed at Tian Ya and fiercely said, "If you dare, stand there without moving." Hearing this, Tian Ya actually stopped moving and chuckled. "I will stay standing here. Come and hit me if you have the guts." "You." Tian Fu was spitting fire from his eyes due to his anger. He clearly told Tian Ya to stop moving while he was inside the matrix, but that guy dared to purposefully misconstrue his meaning and stand an inch outside of the invisible wall. Tian Fu soothed the anger in his heart with effort before coldly stating, "Tian Ya, you still haven't corrected this shameless habit of yours even after all these years. You also clearly know I can't leave here, so how should I go hit you? Don't find an excuse. You are clearly a coward and don't dare to come out. What kind of person are you to just hide in there and escape from reality?" No one could compare with this old guy's ability to make false accusations. It was obvious that Tian Fu was confined inside the matrix and was also suffering from the burning of the soul flame, but now, he was falsely accused of hiding from reality because of cowardice. Tian Fu was so angry that his head emitted smoke. He tightly clenched his fist and heavily punched Tian Ya in the chest with a bang. However, his fist did not even touch Tian Ya before being stopped by the invisible wall, and his body suddenly flew back. Seeing this, Tian Ya grew more satisfied, and his old face lit up with a smile that was begging for a beating. "Tian Fu, how is this hitting bull through air technique that this old man recently learned?" "Hitting bull through air? Hit your fucking bull." Tian Fu's entire body was shuddering as he pointed at Tian Ya. His lips were faintly trembling, but he could not speak. He reckoned Tian Ya was the only one who could act shameless to this degree. He was clearly bounced back by that invisible wall, but this old man actually took the credit. Did he still want to keep any face? "Tian Ya, you shameless scum." It was a long while before Tian Fu managed to rigidly choke out those words. Tian Ya mockingly smiled. "What right does a defeated opponent like you have to humiliate this old man?" "Utter rubbish. If there wasn't an invisible wall blocking this old man, I would have already ripped you into 1,000 pieces." Tian Fu could not resist cursing. He felt his spirit burning in the soul flame, as though his spirit would disperse soon. After throwing those words at Tian Ya, he turned to young Luo Feng. "Just who are you?" If he didn't guess wrong, this matrix had something to do with young Luo Feng. He did not forget that the little child beside young Luo Feng was writing and drawing on the ground just now. Then, a matrix appeared in that place. Instantly, everyone's gaze gathered on young Luo Feng. The members of the Tian family were also gritting their teeth from hatred. If they did not fear her ability, they would have gone up to kill this woman long ago. If it were not for her, the current Tian family would not degenerate to this extent. Young Luo Feng gently stroked the little hamster in her sleeve and did not look up as she said, "Who am I? You aren't worthy of knowing." Her words were not only brazen and arrogant but also carried a haughtiness that looked down on the world. The fact that she set up the ancestral elders and caused them to cut such sorry figures already proved that she had the right to be arrogant. Tian Fu grew completely dispirited. It appeared that he had never imagined Tian family would fall at the hands of a girl. This girl was only 15 years old. Chapter 542, Clan Annihilation 3. Ho ho, he lowly chuckled as he closed his eyes. I gave up everything for the Tian family, but I didn't expect to end up with a fate like this. From now on, I won't care about the Tian family anymore. Tian Fu's body became fainter and fainter, and his voice was also weak. The other ancestral elders already could not handle the power of the soul flame and gradually became more transparent. No, shouted Tian Yi quickly after seeing that Tian Fu was about to give up on the Tian family. Ancestral elders, you can't give up on the Tian family. You are incredibly strong, so how can the matrix that Yun Luo Feng set up to entrap you? I know you must have some other ability. If you give up, Tian family is truly finished. Tian Fu sighed. If we still lived, whether it's this matrix or the fire, neither would be able to injure us. Unfortunately, we are currently nothing but spirits. What else can we do? His voice portrayed his helplessness. Even if he wanted to help the Tian family, he had the will, but he did not have the power. Tian Yi opened his mouth, wanting to continue to persuade him, but his spirit was already mostly consumed by the soul flame, so he could only depend on heaven's will. Tian Ya, Tian Fu turned to look at Tian Ya. I hope you can take into consideration that the Tian family raised you to an adult and leave the Tian family with a way to survive. Even towards the end, he still wanted to make one last struggle. And now, the only thing he could use was Tian Ya's feelings towards the Tian family when he was young. However, when faced with that nearly begging voice of his, Tian Ya merely coldly chuckled. My feelings for the Tian family were all expended back then. Of course, I have to thank your Tian family too. If it weren't for your assassination attempts against me, I wouldn't be able to use the quickest speed to grow up. Tian Fu's body shuddered as he weakly asked, Tian Ya, are you truly this cold-hearted? If you really annihilate the Tian family, how will the world look at you? The current Tian Fu had completely forgotten who was the one screaming for Tian Ya's death from the start. If it were not for Yun Luo Feng, perhaps Tian Ya would have lost his life in the midst of these people's slaughter. However, he now righteously accused Tian Ya of being heartless. Ha ha, Tian Ya guffawed. So what if the world calls me heartless? I, Tian Ya, only ask for a clear conscience when I act. Why is it that your Tian family can kill me, but I can't destroy your Tian family? Now, besides having the Tian name, I have nothing to do with your Tian family. What did the opinion of the people have to do with him? In one's life, they should deal with favors and enmities as they please, kill who they should kill and annihilate the clan they should annihilate. Seeing that Tian Ya could not be reasoned with, Tian Fu turned to Yun Luo Feng next. Little girl, even if my Tian family was the one at fault initially, isn't your method of revenge too cruel? The girl finally slowly looked up. Under the resplendent sun, her features radiated a striking light. Tian family will no longer exist from now on. A simple sentence determined the death sentence for the Tian family. From now on, the Tian family will no longer exist. While these people clashed with each other, Tian Yi's spirit was already so frail that it would scatter as soon as the wind blew. At the final moment, he suddenly laughed in a deranged manner. His laughter was sinister and resonated in the skies. Yun Luo Feng, Tian Ya, you can never annihilate my Tian family. Because my grandson, Tian Yu, has already gone somewhere that you can't discover. Ha ha ha, he will definitely avenge us. The current Tian Yi was very glad that Tian Yu was not home. Otherwise, there would not be anyone who could help him take revenge. Chapter 543, Clan Annihilation 4. Tianyu. At the mention of this name, young Luo Feng's eyes imperceptibly darkened, and she turned to look at Tianya. Can you mobilize your forces to find Tianyu? Girl, leave this matter to me. If we don't pull out all the roots when we cut weeds, there will be trouble later for certain. Moreover, Tianyu is not as impatient as his grandfather or father, and he is quite reserved instead. If we leave him behind, he will definitely be a danger later. Tianya responded seriously after a moment of silence. Tianyi heard the duo's conversation just before his spirit dispersed, and his lips involuntarily raised with a mocking smile. These two people definitely would not be able to find the place that Tianyu was headed for. When he returned, he would certainly avenge the entire Tian family. He had no complaints about dying then. Bang! The soul flame dissipated in the air, and Tianyi's body heavily fell down. At death, a mocking smile remained on his face, and his widened eyes were brimming with satisfaction. It was as though he absolutely believed that young Luo Feng and Tianya would both fall very soon. At the same time, Tian Fu and the other elders all could not handle the might of the soul flame anymore. Their spirits changed from transparent to nothing before being finally swept away by the breeze, dispersing in the air like a puff of green smoke. The remaining members of the Tian family all displayed a fearful expression, and they could help but take a few steps back. Tian Zhan in particular, he was so scared that he could not speak, and his body kept shuddering in the wind. Tianya did not take another look at these people, and his gaze turned to young Luo Feng. Miss Yun, leave these people for me to handle. Also, I will inform the forces in my hands to find the destination of Tianyu in a moment, but I still need your help with something. Help with what? Asked young Luo Feng with raised brows. Tianya was momentarily silent. This time, I originally took Xiaobai with me to look for a medicinal herb. That herb grows by the shores of Wangquan and is extremely hard to find. That herb can only be found using Xiaobai's bloodline as a guide. I hope that you can retrieve this herb for me. All right, young Luo Feng did not contemplate long before agreeing. What is the herb that you want me to find? That medicinal herb is called Spirit Guide. After consuming it, it can raise the strength of the spirit. I see that you possess the techniques for spiritual attacks, so this herb is a rare supplement for you. Only, the little old man rubbed his hands together and said with a chuckle, you need to share half of the Spirit Guide with me after you retrieve it. That's not a problem, but you need to tell me first, how do I get to Wangquan? Young Luo Feng attentively watched the elderly man with a smile. Could it be that I need to kill myself first? Hearing this, the old man was taken aback, and he could not resist laughing out loud. Girl, this Wangquan is the name of a place. Because that place doesn't have any laws or governing power and only respects the rule of the fist, power struggles occur often. This results in a death count of tens of thousands every day, so it is named Wangquan. Because the previous owner of this body did not familiarize herself with the news of this continent, it was normal that young Luo Feng did not know about this. However, if it were someone else, if they committed such a simple mistake, they would definitely find a hole to burrow into from embarrassment. Young Luo Feng was different though. Her expression was as peaceful as usual, as though nothing had happened. I understand. Wait for my news at the Yun estate at that time. Xiaobai, let's go. Lin Ruobai gently blinked. Master, I have wanted to ask you earlier. Where did you kidnap this little boy beside you? He's too adorable. Chapter 544. I want to marry him. Without waiting for young Luo Feng to explain, Qingyun's voice, which was as melodious as a black-naped oriole, was heard from the side. He is my Mrs. Son. As though struck by lightning, both Tianya and Lin Ruobai were stupefied simultaneously. Young Luo Feng actually had a son. And the son was this old as well. Goodness, this was simply inconceivable. Tianya glanced at young Luo Feng in jealousy. Even I, someone with half of my body buried in the earth, don't have a wife, but you're only 15 years old, and you already have a son this old. Lin Ruobai's eyes lit up. She lifted her hands to squeeze Xiaomo's cheeks, a brilliant smile on her baby face. Little brother, be good. Let me hear a sister from you. Xiaomo's face immediately darkened. He was already someone who had lived who knows how long, and he was actually called a little brother by some little girl who was still wet behind her ears. And she actually teased him. Thinking of this, Xiaomo slapped Lin Ruobai's hand away and hid behind Yun Luofeng, his hands tightly tugging her clothes. Only mother can touch my face. His intent was to make Lin Ruobai give up on harassing him, but who knew that the light in Lin Ruobai's eyes would become brighter after seeing his cold yet adorable appearance. Master, I want to marry him. Her words were like a sudden clap of thunder, stunning Xiaomo instantly. He looked in astonishment at Lin Ruobai, who had her chin slightly raised, and was so scared that he could not even speak. How could there be a woman this shameless in the world? She actually told a male stranger who she met for the first time that she wanted to marry him. And, as a woman, shouldn't she say, be married too? Why did it become, marry? However, Master definitely would not agree. Xiaomo's heart settled upon thinking this, and he lifted his adorable little face with satisfaction, looking at Lin Ruobai with disdain. Approved, uttered Yun Luofeng slowly just when Xiaomo was extremely pleased with himself. At that moment, Xiaomo's heart broke into pieces. 2 trails of glistening tears trickled down his delicate face, his large and bright eyes brimming with disbelief. He did not want to believe Master would sell him like this at all. Miss, Qingyan could not bear this, little Master is only 5 years old. We should wait until he's older before deciding this, shouldn't we? Mother, she's right. Xiaomo immediately regained his wits and pulled on Yun Luofeng's clothes as he aggressively said, I'm only 5 and still a child. The age difference between us is too big, we don't match. Yun Luofeng faintly raised her brows. It would be quite nice for you to be a child bride. Age isn't a problem for true love. No, you can't be this cruel. You can't shove me at this woman. Xiaomo nearly started crying. His chastity was sold by Master this easily. Even though he was already several centuries old, he still retained the appearance of a 5-year-old. He simply could not grow up, so how should he marry? Xiaomo, Yun Luofeng neared his ears with a wicked smile on her lips, you swindled me once, so I have to pay you back. Hence, you will be Xiao Bai's wife from now on. No, Xiaomo hurriedly used his arms to hug Yun Luofeng's thighs and refused to let go no matter what. You can't ditch me like this. And I'm a man, she's the woman, so why am I her wife? Didn't you reverse it? Yun Luofeng lightly caressed her chin and blinked. Because Xiao Bai said she wanted to marry you, so you are naturally the wife and she the husband. Chapter 545, Hopeless Xiaomo. Xiaomo still wanted to protest, but a small hand pulled him off of Yun Luofeng from behind and dangled him in the air. You damn woman, let me go. Sensing the presence behind him, Xiaomo trembled from anger and kept struggling in the hands of Lin Ruobai. Master already gave you to me. Lin Ruobai slightly lifted her chin, and the smile on her cute face became more radiant. So you are my wife from now on. Xiaomo completely shriveled and stared at Yun Luofeng with incredibly aggrieved eyes. His expression made him remarkably resemble an abandoned puppy, so pitiful that it made tender affections arise in the hearts of the people around them. After seeing this, Tianya only wanted to end his life with a slam of his head. His eyes were full of resentment as he indignantly said, this world is too unfair. Even a 5-year-old child is betrothed, but I am still a virgin. Yun Luofeng's eyes swept across him. With your position on this continent, you would have a massive response if you called. Wouldn't it be easy if you wanted to lose your virginity? No, Tianya lifted his chin and said pridefully, I want to remain chaste for my Fu Sheng until I find her. To him, being a virgin was a prideful matter. After all, he was protecting his heart and body for the woman he loved. Just how many men were able to remember their initial intent in this world? It's late already. Xiao Bai, we should set off. Long Fei, bring Zhang Linger and Qingyan to the Yun residence to wait for me. Yun Luofeng glanced at Lin Ruobai and Xiaomo with a wicked smile. As for Xiaomo, I will leave him in your hands for you to train him during this journey. Yes, Master, Lin Ruobai respectfully responded as she straightened up. And Xiaomo, who was hanging from her hand, had a face brimming with hopelessness, as though it was the end of the world. He could already imagine his future miserable life. As he watched their departing figures, the smile on Tianya's face gradually disappeared. He lightly sighed and said as if he were talking to himself, I don't know whether it is right or wrong to let Miss Yun go to Wangquan. With her brains and talent though, she can definitely do well there. This was also training for her. Xuanhuan was situated in the northmost part of the continent. Because it was rich in extremely precious medicinal herbs, a countless number of factions took root here. Combined with the limited resources, this led to frequent occurrences of wide-scale fighting. In this place, it was survival of the fittest. The weak could only become the stepping stones of other people. On the mountain road of a shady forest, young Luo Feng held the hands of Lin Ruobai and Xiao Mo as they walked towards the end of the road. After reaching the end of this road they would step into Xuanhuan City. However, just as she reached the end, the sun in front of her was suddenly blocked. An enormous shadow appeared in front of her, and the stench of sweat could be faintly smelled. Oh, you look very unfamiliar. You don't look like someone from Xuanhuan City. Do you understand the rules of our city? For anyone new entering Xuanhuan City, the women have to be played with by my brother and me, and the men must crawl under our groins. Would you like to start now? Ha ha ha. A rough voice was heard from above young Luo Feng. She slightly looked up, her brazen eyes slowly landing on the two people blocking her. Are there any other paths? Chapter 546, Xuanhuan City's Factions. The girl's voice was very calm, but it easily stirred the hearts of these two brothers. Although they had seen quite a few women over the years, they had never seen a peerless woman like this before. If they could have her under their bodies, it would be delectable for certain. Of course there is a second path. The bearded man licked the corner of his mouth, and that is to defeat the two of us. However, do you think that you three alone are enough to oppose us? The two girls were both fairly young, and this girl clothed in white definitely was not older than 15 years old. The little boy did not need to be counted. What could a 5-year-old do? Oh, young Luo Feng faintly raised her brows and said with a meaningful smile, then I choose the second path. The two brothers were briefly stunned, and before they could recover their wits, the girl suddenly darted past them. As her dark hair fluttered up, a faint, sweet fragrance drifted toward them with the wind. Then, a gush of hot blood spurted out of their arms, as spectacular as a fountain. Ah! The bearded man sharply screamed and tightly clutched his bleeding arm, his face deathly pale. His brother was not any better than him. His fair appearance drained of color, and blood continued to drip down from his arm, quickly forming a river on the ground. Just who are you? He coldly asked between tightly gritted teeth. Young Luo Feng looked up with a faint smile. Someone who will turn Xuanhuan City upside down. Her words were very arrogant. They meant that due to her arrival, a head-turning transformation would occur in Xuanhuan City. You. The fair-looking man's expression changed, and it was a long while before he could choke out, you are too conceited. In comparison to the vulgar, bearded man, this man still remained fairly calm, but his contempt was as clear as day on his pale appearance. Different factions tightly intertwine in Xuanhuan. There are also countless experts here. You alone don't have the ability to turn Xuanhuan on its head. Younger brother, why do we bother continuing to bullshit with this woman? She only injured us just now because of her sneak attack, the bearded man fumed between gritted teeth. Let's attack her together and capture this woman. Tut tut. Mocking laughter suddenly came from the side after the bearded man finished speaking. Lin Ruobai had her little face held up high, her dark and bright eyes brimming with a confident glint. You still want to capture my master? My master doesn't need to do anything to deal with people like you, I can resolve it in her place. Insolent. The bearded man snorted and rapidly charged toward Lin Ruobai. A machete suddenly appeared in his hand and slashed down toward her, stirring up a gust of wind around him. Bang! The machete planted in the ground, sending up a shower of dirt and dust. But before the bearded man could breathe a sigh of relief, his entire body froze. In the midst of the flying dirt, Lin Ruobai's hand had a tight hold on his machete, her sleeves fluttering in the breeze and revealing a fair forearm. A trickle of blood dripped down her arm, but she did not notice it at all. Her smile was like a brilliant flower, extremely magnificent. I already said that my master doesn't need to do anything to deal with people like you. I'm more than enough. To Lin Ruobai, letting young Luo Feng deal with these people would dirty her hands. And as her disciple, she was responsible for dealing with these small inconveniences for master. Moreover, these people dared to insult master earlier. She would not forgive them based on this point alone. Chapter 547, I want to see your boss. The bearded man's gaze slowly trailed to the hand that Xiao Bai used to catch the blade. Fear surfaced in his eyes, and he harshly swallowed some spit before looking up at the young girl with a cute appearance in front of him. You. The bearded man could only speak one word before Lin Ruobai's leg flew up and harshly landed on his chest, sending him into the air. Master, I finally understand why you like to kick people. Lin Ruobai's smile was more brilliant than the sun. It turns out the feeling of kicking people is extremely satisfying. Oh dear, I'm already mesmerized by this feeling and need to kick him a few more times. As soon as she finished speaking, Lin Ruobai leapt up and shot in front of the man. What followed was a one-sided beating. Xiao Mo dumbfoundedly looked at the incomparably bold and powerful Lin Ruobai and swallowed with some fear. He subconsciously withdrew behind young Luo Feng and weakly said, Master, I want to return to God's code space. During this period of time, he returned to God's code space at night and reappeared in the morning, so it did not provoke Lin Ruobai's suspicion. Now, in order to not be tormented by this violent woman, he swore that he would never take a single step outside of God's code space ever again. Young Luo Feng glanced at him. Weren't you the one who kept complaining and were previously unwilling to return to God's code space? I don't care. I will immediately return to God's code space. I won't reappear again until this woman leaves. Xiao Mo glared at Lin Ruobai, and then he took advantage of young Luo Feng's inattention and speedily darted inside God's code space. He planned to completely disappear for a while. The best outcome would be for Lin Ruobai to forget his existence. Unfortunately, he underestimated Lin Ruobai's determination. Since she already planned to take him as a wife, how could she forget him? Lady warrior, spare me. This little one was blind. I beg you to spare me. While young Luo Feng was contemplating in silence, the bearded man's shaky begging was heard from the front. Young Luo Feng looked over and immediately saw that Lin Ruobai was stepping on the previously fiendish man. Her haughty face was slightly tilted up as she disdainfully looked at the man covered in bruises underneath her foot. How did you humiliate my master just now? Lin Ruobai snorted. Did you think this is it? However, I'm quite willing to give you a chance. If you cut off your tongue, I will spare your dog life. The bearded man's face abruptly changed. You damn girl, don't be greedy, you. Bang. He did not finish speaking before Lin Ruobai's foot ferociously landed on his face, blocking all of his words. He could only make faint whimpering noises. Xiao Bai. Young Luo Feng halted her actions and slowly walked toward the bearded man. Bring me to see your boss. Perhaps due to young Luo Feng's words, Lin Ruobai did move her foot, giving the man a chance to speak. His face had a noticeable footprint, and his mouth was completely swollen. It was evident how much force Lin Ruobai used just now. Our boss isn't someone you can see willy-nilly. Since these people would not spare him even if he begged, his voice hardened once more, but the fear in his eyes did not decrease and increased instead. Is that so? The corner of young Luo Feng's lips raised with a wicked smile. Her smile was similar to that of a devil from hell, making you plunge down to hell if you were careless. Chapter 548, Tianyu 1. Xiao Bai, the girl briefly paused before continuing, this man is too lascivious. As a punishment, turn him into a eunuch. Hearing this, the bearded man's face turned ghastly white in the blink of an eye. He hurriedly climbed up from the ground and drew back. Don't come over here, otherwise. Otherwise what? The young girl narrowed her eyes and chuckled evilly, do you want to scream for help? Don't worry, even if you screamed your lungs out, no one would come to save you. Seeing the nefarious smile on young Luo Feng's face and Lin Ruobai walking over while rubbing her hands, the bearded man finally felt panic. As a man, if he really became a eunuch, how could he continue to live on with his pride intact? It was at this moment that the fair man from the side suddenly spoke, I will bring you to see boss. Younger brother. The bearded man's expression abruptly changed. Once boss finds out we brought a stranger back to him, he will be furious for sure. We have no choice but to agree, the fair man shook his head. Even if we don't agree, she would still find another way to meet boss. Since it's like this, why don't we bring them there? If boss wants to blame someone, I will take responsibility. The bearded man did not say anything else, but his tightly clenched fist revealed the anger in his heart. Finally, he forcefully took a deep breath, and his swollen cheeks were somewhat malevolent. Our boss isn't someone you can provoke. Since you want to die this much, I'll help you. After saying this, he glared at young Luo Feng before turning around to walk through the gate of Wangquan City. All sorts of factions intricately intertwined in Wangquan City, and the faction that they were heading to was the 11th ranked Big Dipper gang. Although they were only ranked in 11th place, the strength of the Big Dipper gang could not be underestimated. They said that the leader of Big Dipper gang had already broken through to sky-level spirit cultivator, so it could be seen just how powerful the top 10 forces were. At this time, inside the Heavenly Martial Pavilion, which was not far from the Big Dipper gang, an elderly man was sitting upright in the chief seat and gracefully sampling tea. Then, a servant hurriedly ran inside and said while respectfully cupping his fists, "Master, a man who calls himself Tianyu came to visit." Tianyu? The elderly man was briefly taken aback and frowned. What did he come here for? I already said that I don't want to have any dealings with members of the Tian family. Nor will I see any of them. The servant carefully glanced at the elderly man brimming with impatience and replied, "Master, young Master Tianyu also had me bring a message to Master," he said. The entire Tian family was annihilated. Bang! The elderly man's hand trembled, and the teacup fell from his hand to the floor, shattering into pieces. Then, he abruptly stood up and tightly clenched his fists, veins bulging on his forehead. "What did you say?" The entire Tian family was annihilated. Quickly let Tianyu enter. I must know what happened. Ever since several decades ago when his own daughter did not listen to his advice and insisted on marrying someone from the Tian family, he cut off all contact with her, and even Tianyu, this grandson of his, was not liked by him. It was to the point that he never asked anything about them for all these years. However, he did not imagine that in the end, the entire Tian family would be annihilated. The elderly man's body weakened, and he dropped onto the chair. His heart was enveloped in a wrenching pain, and he could not help but tightly grasp onto the corner of his robe. Chapter 549, Tianyu 2. Not long later, a handsome young man slowly walked toward the main hall. The last remnants of the setting sun cast onto the man, stretching his shadow. Perhaps due to hearing the grievous news of the Tian family, his current features were darker than usual, and blood vessels covered his black eyes. It was not until Tianyu saw the elderly man inside the main hall that his expression eased a bit. His thin lips slightly opened as he slowly said, "Grandfather, you are the only family that I have left." Boom. As though lightning had struck on a sunny day, the elderly man was immediately stupefied. It was a long while before he recovered and asked, his expression ghastly pale, "You are saying that your mother... she's dead." The entire Tian family was annihilated. Tianyu could never have imagined that he only left the Tian household for a little over half a month, and these many events happened. When he heard about this nightmare while outside, he did not believe it. But he did not dare to return to the Tian residence, afraid that he would also meet an untimely end. Hence, as he investigated the truth behind the matter, he traveled to Wangquan City to rely on his grandfather. "Who is it?" The elderly man broke the table in half with a slap, and his geriatric appearance gradually twisted. "Tell me. Who killed your mother? I will definitely make them pay 100-fold. The bottom of Tianyu's eyes revealed his complicated feelings, but more of it was a bone-deep hatred. It was young Luo Feng and Tianya. When Tianyu recalled that peerlessly beautiful girl, his fists tightly clenched, and his nails dug into his palm, wisps of blood trickling out. After the anger passed, the elderly man recovered his calmness and asked with a cold expression, "Why?" Young Luo Feng has a maidservant named Zhang Linger who is the daughter of a collateral branch member of our Tian family. Young Luo Feng wanted Zhang Linger to marry a guard of hers, but Zhang Linger declined. And that member of my Tian family wanted to protect his daughter, so he secretly took her away to protect her, which angered young Luo Feng. She teamed up with the traitor of the Tian family, Tianya, and invaded the Tian residence, killing everyone in the family. Having lived in a giant dye tank like the Tian family, how could Tianyu be completely clean? Hence, he could casually make up a completely bogus lie like this. Also, the only ones present that day besides young Luo Feng and her people were members of the Tian family, so the world only knew that the Tian family was exterminated and did not know why. Even if people from Heavenly Martial Pavilion went to investigate, they still would not find anything. More importantly, as a safeguard, he used a portion of the Tian family force that he brought with him that day to create rumors, causing young Luo Feng to become a presence that the world pointed fingers at. Young Luo Feng, Tian Ya. The elderly man was so angry that he started laughing as the killing intent in his eyes intensified. These two people, not only did they force an honest girl into prostitution, but they also forced a collateral relative of your Tian family to marry her guard and did something this atrocious. Tian Yu, don't worry, grandfather will definitely avenge your mother and make these people die without a burial site. He only mentioned avenging his mother and did not mention the Tian family at all. It was clear that he still did not acknowledge the presence of the Tian family. However, as long as Yun Luofeng and Tian Ya were killed, it would already be more than enough. Someone, come and bring young master to rest. The elderly man's expression was bone-chillingly cold but abated a few degrees when he looked at Tian Yu. Tian Yu, since the Tian family doesn't exist anymore, you will be a member of the Tang family from now on. Your name will be Tang Tianyu. Yes, grandfather, Tang Tianyu respectfully responded as he lowered his head. Chapter 550, Taking Over Your Position 1. Good child, Tang Ran lightly sighed and lifted his hand to clap Tang Tianyu on the shoulders. You have suffered these past few days. You can live well in the Tang family from now on, I won't treat you unfairly. This child's potential was quite decent. If he was carefully nurtured, he would definitely be prosperous in Xuanhuan City in the future. It was unfortunate that he was previously angry with his daughter and, in turn, did not like this grandson as well, so he never trained him. Grandfather, I won't disappoint you. Tang Tianyu looked up with determined features. There would eventually be a day where he killed Yun Luofeng and Tianya with his own hands. And also take over the Heavenly Martial Pavilion from grandfather's hands. When the servant escorted Tang Tianyu away, the elderly man's face darkened bit by bit, and he coldly said, Tang Ying, go and investigate the truth behind the annihilation of the Tian family. Suddenly, a black figure gently drifted down in front of Tang Ran and asked with a deep voice, does master not believe in young master Tianyu's words? Tang Ran snorted, how can I not understand the conduct of the members of the Tian family? Immediately go investigate the truth. Unfortunately, the villain can always outsmart the law. Before telling the lie, Tang Tianyu already spread this rumor throughout the continent. And something like rumors can never disappear no matter how you stifle them. As a result, the truth that Tang Ying discovered at the end was identical to the words of Tang Tianyu. Nothing could be done about the lack of other people on the mountain that day. People only knew that it was Yun Luofeng and Tianya who killed the members of the Tian family because only these few people entered the uppermost level of Tian Mountain that day. People merely needed to remember their appearance and then draw it on paper before transmitting it. There would eventually be someone who recognized them. Yun Luofeng especially, too many people had seen her. And Tianya also treated quite a few patients in the past, so anyone who was treated by him would remember his face. Master, Tang Ying briefly paused before continuing, how should we deal with Yun Luofeng and Tianya? Hearing his question, an icy killing intent flashed through Tang Ran's eyes. Regardless of whether Tianyu spoke the truth or not, both of them deserve to die. Immediately relay the order to search for them. Kill them on sight. Yes, Tang Ying cupped his fists in salute. After his response, his figure disappeared without a trace like a breeze. Tang Ran probably never would have imagined that the enemy who exterminated Tian family was already inside Xuanhuan City. If he went out to look for Yun Luofeng, he would not find her no matter how hard he looked. Currently, outside of the estate of Big Dipper Gang, the lookout caught sight of a bearded man bringing two young girls over and could not help but whistle, Peng Fei, Peng Qinggran, you two brothers are quite lucky to have acquired such superior quality beauties this time. Hearing the teasing of his fellow gang member, the corner of Peng Fei's mouth twitched, and embarrassment leaked onto his face. Right, Peng Fei, what's up with your face? Who beat you up? This. Peng Fei chuckled in embarrassment, I accidentally tripped. There's nothing to do with you here, I'm going to find boss. There was some suspicion in the eyes of the lookout member. How could tripping cause an appearance like this? He must have been beaten up and found it too embarrassing to say. While he was hesitating, Peng Fei and his brother already brought the two girls inside the gang. Our boss should be cultivating in seclusion. I will bring you to see him now, said Peng Qinggran in a deep voice as his eyes swept across Yun Luofeng.